Never a dull moment in the world of horse games, is it? In a recent Reddit post, I was made aware that Star Stable, the largest MMO horse game, has been reported by the Swedish Consumer Association, which is a non-profit organization whose task it is to safeguard consumer interests. Essentially, they keep an eye on bad faith advertisers and ensure they stick to the regulations. They reported Star Stable to the Swedish Consumer Agency, which is a government agency who could potentially now investigate SSO or Star Stable for their marketing practices. Now, this is a bit shocking and really comes out of left field. I would be the first to say that yes, although SSO is extremely expensive, their practices are no better or worse than other mobile games readily available on the internet. But to be fair, in another article from Ritsport, it states that over 40 games are actually going under scrutiny in Sweden. This all really hinges on their laws and the way those laws apply to kids. Now, today we have two articles to look at, one from SVT and the other, of course, from Ritsport. We're going to start with SVT because that is the bigger one of the two. But before we get into all of that, I would like to make something very clear. The association is the non-profit association who are reporting Star Stable, and the agency is the government extension who are going to be investigating Star Stable. But it was the consumers who essentially reported Star Stable to the association, and that encouraged them to report them then further to the agency. So that's just kind of to get that out of the way. It's a little bit complicated, but mostly I use the term agency because they're really the people who are investigating this. I would very much like to thank Accurate for helping me defining these terms and getting all of these little facts down pat. I would not have been able to have done this video without you. Please check out her Instagram in the link below. And thank you to my coffee supporters for, as always, being amazing. Let's get into it. So, the article goes. With misleading currency and exhortations to buy, the popular online game Star Stable tries to get children to spend money. This is the opinion of Sweden's consumers, who are now reporting the game to the Swedish Consumer Agency. As a child, you should be able to play without the risk of being cheated in this way, says Sinan Agdat from the non-profit organization. Sweden's consumers reported Star Stable to the Swedish Consumer Agency as they believe that it violates the Marketing Act. First of all, we have discovered that direct invitations to purchases are directed at children. It is forbidden, says Sinan Agdad, digital expert at the Swedish Consumers Association. End quote. In short, Star Stable was reported to this agency by the people in regards to consumer safety, particularly their marketing strategies, which they considered unethical because it was targeting kids. This is a pretty big deal, particularly in Sweden, because they have some hefty laws around advertising to kids. In 1991, Sweden banned advertisements aimed at kids aged 12 and under because, and I quote, kids cannot tell the difference between ads and actual TV programs, a stance that is supported by numerous pieces of research, including a 2009 study from Yale University. End quote. This is only further enforced by Chile, who placed a ban on food-related advertisements aimed at kids on their TV networks between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. No adverts about food can be shown to kids because kids do not have the impulse controls of adults and will very quickly believe what they see on TV. This is a widely known problem with kids. Many studies have found that they struggle to differentiate between what an advert is telling them and what the actual cartoon is telling them. Sweden realized this problem when their TV networks expanded in the 90s and so placed a regulation on that to protect kids. Now, this type of regulation would, of course, extend to online over time. On the Sweden's Consumer Agency website, where it outlines exactly what is not acceptable marketing practices aimed towards kids, it says the following. Direct solicitations to purchase prohibited. You may not direct exhortations to purchases to children under the age of 18. This is true in all types of media. You must also not encourage a child to persuade their parents or their adults to buy something for them. And in direct marketing prohibited, it says it is forbidden to send direct marketing to children under the age of 16. The ban applies to all forms of direct advertising, such as letters, telephony, and text messages. That is, any advertisements where you address a specific person directly. End quote. Now, this is very common for SSO, who will often send out emails when double Starcoin weekends are happening or to promote their game. Under this regulation alone, it does appear they are technically breaking the law, at least in Sweden. However, I am not a lawyer, so I could be wrong on this. I just quick pause here. I just find it really funny that Star Stable lives in Sweden and they're being investigated by the Sweden company because they didn't stick to the regulations. I just find it funny. I just find it funny. Let's move on. Now, continuing on with the article, they specifically mention the Marketing Act. This act, just for reference, is used to regulate marketing in Sweden specifically. Basic things like aggressive advertising, misleading advertising, and poor marketing is all mentioned in this document, and makes it clear that you should engage in fair marketing practices, particularly when it comes to kids. And all of the above that I mentioned that was on that website is really what is in that Marketing Act, which once again suggests that SSO, according to this agency, is not really acting in good faith, at least when it comes to kids. But are they acting in good faith or not? The article mentioned 2 specific points this agency is unhappy with, so let's unpack. The game also has its own currency, and to buy things you need to exchange Swedish kronar for so-called star coins. At certain points in the game, it doesn't say how much the thing they're trying to sell costs in Swedish kronar. They only show the price in star coins. Sweden's consumers are also critical of pricing. Some weekends you can buy star coins that are worth twice as much as if you bought them on another weekend. This may sound confusing, and that's because it's confusing, says Sinan Agdad, and continues. When you look at all the combined marketing in the game and all types of advertising messages, we think it's a type of marketing that tries to mislead and trick children into spending more than they would have otherwise. End quote. So, double star coin weekends, which gives you double the amount of star coins you would otherwise get outside of those events for the same price, and the fact that the money is being switched out from kronar to star coins are the 2 issues they mention here. And they're not terrible issues to be upset with, because it really comes down to psychology and manipulation. In an article from Psychology of Games, they mention specifically how buying things on credit lessens the impact of pain of purchase, and I quote, "Credit disconnects the pain of purchasing from the pleasure by separating the two in time. Your bill comes later." And in the case of buying credit up front, like in the case of a refillable gift card or a cash of in-game currency, the initial pain is there to buy the minimum amount, but spending the leftover credit or currency is almost entirely painless. You can't spend it anywhere else, so it doesn't feel like losing real money when you use it to buy that latte or that character skin. End quote. Mobile game practices, or these premium currency practices, are some of the most unscrupulous in the industry. They use gambling psychology to get you addicted to your games, and a slew of other ways to ensure you not only will pay, but really want to pay, or even get desperate to pay. These issues, although not as prevalent in Star Stable as I mentioned, is still part of their main marketing strategy, as shown by the Starcoin exclusive items which prey on FOMO, and the double Starcoin weekends, which, although not as bad, constantly make kids feel like there is a timer and they need to buy fast, which is another strategy employed by these companies. Another one to mention is the Jorvik shillings, where they price items 9,999 or 9,900, and this only puts pressure on kids and preys on the impatience to save up for that item, and instead forces them or cajoles them into paying. Now we're going to turn our attention to the second article, which basically reiterates the first with a few bits of extra information. This article comes from Rutsport and says the following. The organization Sweden's Consumers has taken a closer look at 40 of the most popular games that can be downloaded in Apple and Google's app stores. Among them is the horse game Star Stable, aimed at children, which is now reported to the Konsumentombudsmannen. I butchered the hell out of that. Among the reviewed games, more than 75% contain in-app purchases, while several of them are recommended from the age of 3. That is really young. According to the Marketing Act, children must not be exposed to direct purchase invitations within the games. It is really bad that it looks this way. The games attract children and parents because they are free, but once inside the game, there is no stopping what the game companies tried to do to you, says Sinan Agdad, an expert on digital consumer protection issues, in a press release. And further on, he says, "This is not about a friendly lesson in personal finance, but about adults who trick children out of money," says Sinan Agdad. I absolutely agree with that, actually. This further enforces the fact that yes, it is against the law to advertise to kids, and the 40 games are being scrutinized by this agency. But what does all of this mean for Star Stable? Are they in trouble? Will they get sued or taken to court? What's going on here? This is just going to be my own speculation, so let's just keep that in mind going forward. Thanks. In very short, with the law against child advertising in Sweden and the fact that MMO games often exploit children and players for monetary gain, there might be an issue to contend here. they're also not only taking on SSO, they're also hoping to investigate Roblox. The Sweden's consumer agency may have a leg to stand on, and they have every right to take action. And I quote, "The Swedish consumer agency, Consumer Ombudsman, are able to take action against inter alia, misleading advertising and other types of marketing, unfair contract terms, incorrect price information, and dangerous products and services." End quote. So, if they decide that Star Stable is in fact going against their laws and regulations, they will be able to take action. In Sweden, the violation of the Marketing Act will mean, and I quote, "A trader may be issued to pay a market disruption fee or be subject to an order in conjunction with a conditional fine if the trader or person acting on behalf of the trader intentionally or negligently violates certain provisions in the Swedish Marketing Act." Now, to be fair, I'm not a lawyer. I just kind of grabbed this on Google and did a little bit of research. I might be wrong here, so I'm more than happy to listen to anyone who has more information. Just to be clear, I'm just kind of drawing conclusions from what I'm reading here. Whether all of this means Star Stable will be investigated remains to be seen, as anything can happen, and really it could all just be a bluff. We'll have to wait and see. 40 other games, like I said, are also being investigated, and seeing as Sweden has some pretty strict laws pertaining to advertising to children, it could very well be that some gaming companies might have to adjust their strategies, at least in Sweden. However, at the same time, there was a little while back in 2018-19 when loot boxes came under scrutiny, and although they all went through the rigmarole of courts, they were a little regulated, but were not knocked down as hard as many had hoped. So really, it's all up in the air for now. But here is Star Stable's response to all of this, and I wanted to add it because I did find it rather funny. And I quote, "The gaming company has commented on the report on writing to SVT. At Star Stable, we care about our users and we take consumer protection very seriously. We welcome a review and we will of course cooperate with the Swedish Consumer Agency if they contact us."